What's up, Scoop Podcast? I'm your host, Erica Krupin, and on today's episode, I have a special guest. I have Paul Jamison on the freaking podcast. What's up, Paul?
Hey, Erica.
I'm so excited. So, for those of you that don't know, Paul is from the green industry, and I have been following Paul for I feel like since 2020 when I seen you at the LAL event. Um, you caught my eye. I was like, he's so energetic and he's just mingling with people. And you seemed very like natural and gave off a good vibe. And over the past 4 years, like you have so much going on. You're the host of the Green Industry podcast. You're an author of 4 books, which is Cut That Grass, Make That Cash, Winning Strategies for a Thriving Landscaping Business, Best Business Practices, and most recent, How to Build a Thriving Lawn Care Business. You have been a busy man.
Amen.
Yeah.
That was motivated, man.
Yeah, super motivating. And you pump out a ton of content, educational content, lawn care content. Um, Man, how do you do it?
I don't know.
With God's plan, right? All
Yeah.
right. So basically what I want to talk about today is we're going to talk about your book because I love that you are a four-time published author, which that's super inspiring. And with the education that you provide to the community and the education that you bring into yourself, it's really important to continue your education as like time goes on, right? What made you want to start doing this whole like social media thing and grow yourself as a business owner?
In 2019, I went to California, San Jose, California. So one of my customers, Erica, Ken and Terry, they are very, very wealthy people. And their main home is in San Jose, California, which is a very expensive, one of the most expensive places in the entire world to live. Um, that's where they call it the Silicon Valley, where all these big tech companies are. But these folks are so rich that they bought a country club home here in Atlanta in one of the premier neighborhoods, and it's a golf membership. You got to pay outrageous amounts of money just to be at this golf club. And anyway, they are my customer. And so they knew that I kind of was getting into social media because I would ask them, I would say, "Hey, your house is so beautiful and you guys are never here," because they live in California, but they would only come here maybe 5, 6 times a year. They come in for a week and they bring their friends and they go golfing and live it up and all of that at the golf country club. And I would say, "Hey, I make social media videos. Do you mind if I use your beautiful home as like a backdrop?" I shot a commercial for Lowe's, and I made it look like it was my house, even though I, I don't even know if I could afford the property taxes at this house. But in the commercial, they don't know. So, anyway, they knew that I was into social media. So one day I was out sweating my butt off, mowing the grass, and Ken comes out and he's like, "Hey, Paul." They also knew I was a Cleveland Browns fan. He said, "Hey, guess what?" And I said, "What?" He's like, "The Cleveland Browns are playing on Monday Night Football against the San Francisco 49ers." And I was like, "Oh, cool," because he's a season ticket holder for the 49ers. I said, "Cool." And he's like, "You want to come?" And I'm thinking, well, of course I want to come. And he was very proactive. He's like, "Listen, we'll pay for your flight. You can stay at our house. We'll take you golfing at the country club out in San Fran." And he's like, "You want to come?" So I was like, "Sure." So anyway, I got to fly out there. It was my first time ever flying. It wasn't first class, but it was the Comfort Plus. But I'll take it. I'm just used to sitting in the back of the airplane. You know what I mean? So
Same.
this was a upgrade. And so anyway, it took me out there. We went to the Monday Night Football game, and on the Sunday before that, his wife Terry was like, "Hey, do you want to see Google and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and all the social media, Apple? They're all in our backyard." And I was like, "Sure." So Sunday morning, we went to Starbucks. We got a cup of coffee. It was like the perfect weather. It was October in San Francisco. Weather was just so beautiful. And California is just so beautiful. The Pacific Ocean is on the one side, and then there's a mountain range on the other side. It's just breathtaking views. And so we start the morning, and I'm answering your question of how why I take social media so serious. But we start the morning, and she drove me to Google, and Google's like its own city. There's buildings that have like numbers. It's like building number 41, and it's like literally like you're in your own city, but it's Google. And they have all these little bikes everywhere where the employees just drive in their own little city of Google here. And that was my first time seeing a car with no driver. And she's like, "Oh, look, there's a car they're testing, and there's a car with no human being, like zero, not like an instructor or anything, zero human beings, and this car is just going down the road." And she was like, made it sound normal, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And it was wild. So we hang out at Google for a little bit, and then we go to Facebook. The address is one hacker way, and we pull in there, and there's security kind of everywhere, and she just pulls right in like she owns the place, and she's like, "All right, well," and I'm like, "I don't think we're supposed to be here," but they know people, and they're a big deal, and so she's driving me around the Facebook parking lot, which is empty because it's Sunday morning, other than the security that are like, "Who do these people think they are?" And it's the same way. They have all these buildings, but and that's sort of like where Mark Zuckerberg has his meetings and office, and so I got to see in the physical place here in California, Facebook. And as I was driving the property, it just started something was slowly started clicking in my mind. I'm like, okay, there's something to this. And then across the street, literally, is Instagram. Because originally Facebook didn't own Instagram, so when they bought them, they kind of set up shop across the street. And then Instagram's a huge, I mean, multiple buildings, big campus. The whole Facebook and Instagram campus is just huge. So things are starting to change. When other people just open their app and click on Facebook, they probably don't have the same way they view it as me, because I like was physically there. Then we drove up to YouTube. It was so embarrassing because at the time I had 3,000 YouTube subscribers, and we get to YouTube and there's security everywhere, and we're standing outside the door, and it's Sunday morning, but they still have their police security people there. And she's like, "Oh, Paul's a YouTuber, and I just wanted to show him you guys and show him the place." And they're like, "Oh, cool. What's your channel?" And I was like, Green Industry Podcast. And I'm sitting there like, they probably think, who's this guy with 3,000 subs acting like he's a YouTuber or whatever. But technically, I'm a YouTuber. Um, and so, anyway, she showed me YouTube campus. It was awesome. And then we went to the Apple Park in the afternoon where they make the iPhones and everything. And so, that day really started to change my life. And then the next morning, Terry and Ken had to go to work before the Monday Night Football game. So I just went to Pete's Coffee, I think it was called, and I had a cup of coffee, and I just sat outside. There's a Whole Foods there as well. I just sat outside in a rocking chair for like hours, and I just was like processing everything I saw the day before. And I knew that to whom much is given, much is required. Like in the Bible, there's a story, Erica, where a master gave someone one talent, the other guy, I think, 5 talents, and the other guy, maybe 10 talents. And the guy with one talent buried it and didn't do anything with it. And when the master came back, he called that person lazy. And then he's like, "Give the one talent I gave you to the guy who was more diligent with what I gave him." And he called that person lazy and wicked, called him wicked. But then the person with the most talents went out and multiplied them. He went out and used them and multiplied. And then the master said, "Well done," and promoted that person. So what I realized is, okay, when it's all said and done and I die, I'm going to have to give an account to God. What did I do with Facebook? What did I do with Instagram? What did I do with Google? What did I do with Apple? What did I do? Like, I saw it, and we have access to all this stuff. And for me, it was a spiritual experience because I was like, there's no excuse. We have to use, or I have to use this stuff for good and productive and help other people. And so for me, when I view social media, I view it as a tool to connect with others, to help others. And I just take it very, very, very serious. So I'm not much of a consumer. I don't watch that much content, to be perfectly honest, but I produce content, I create content, and I try to make sure I'm on these platforms, and I'm filling them with light and truth and encouragement, and That's kind of my story with social media, and ever since that day in 2019, I've it changed my life. It made me reverence and respect social media and using it, maximizing how I can use it, while these platforms give us such good organic reach.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that about you, and the fact that you were able to recognize that and you felt it and you seen what was going on and you made the proper decisions, you are connecting with people. I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but you and I connected basically through social media, and because of a job or event, we chatted. We sat there, we talked about religion, you answered questions, and it was like a long, long conversation. And because of that, I came home. I flew back to Michigan and I contacted my pastor. I said, "Hey, I need to have I need to have a conversation. I have three very specific questions to ask you." And that day, that Friday, I think it was October, I gave my heart to the Lord and asked him to be my Lord and Savior. And then I started to go to church and I got baptized. And then because of that, I was going and people were noticing. My family started to go. Josh's family has started to go. So it's like growing. The church is getting larger and larger. The section's getting larger. And the most important to me right now is my father. I haven't had a very good relationship with my parents in probably about the last 20 years. And I have seen my parents more in the past 7 months than I probably have in a decade. And we're closer. And my dad actually became saved. And that was huge because my dad was living a rough, wild life. And it was a big move. And all of this kind of happened and moved forward a lot faster, honestly, because you were placed in my life, Paul, and we had those conversations and you didn't brush me off. You were like, "Okay, yeah. What do you want to know?" And I appreciate that so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's just it's something that you can hear people talk about, you can see online, but until you feel the experience and you feel the Lord speaking to you, it's just something that you have to be able to experience yourself to really understand like what's happening and what he's trying to do with you.
Totally.
Yeah. And so because you're doing all the social media stuff and you're doing a really good job, um I've observed some things, and so selfishly I do have some questions. So when you go to events, say for instance, there's somebody out here listening that wants to continue education, they want to go to events, they want to meet people, but they're going to go by themselves and they're a little unsure, they don't know what to do, they don't know how to mingle. When you're going to an event by yourself, and say if you don't know anybody, what would be a good like icebreaker conversation or thing to talk about to talk to somebody and break that ice?
I went to an event by myself last year. It was in Texas, Dallas, Texas area. It's called Vid Summit. It was Mr. Beast, YouTuber, was one of the speakers, and Myron Golden, a businessman, was a speaker. Daryl Eves hosted the event, and so I went by myself. Now I knew Justin Moore was going to be there, who helps me with sponsorships, and I knew my buddy Justin Rogers, a pressure washing guy, was going to be there. But I just would go to the sessions and then talk to the person next to me and try to be friendly. I had one person that was kind of rude to me, so
Oh,
that was a little frustrating. And they're like, "Hey, I'm Paul." Like I'm all upbeat, and I'm a glass hat full kind of guy, and I'm like, let's be friends." And he was like, "I'm too cool to talk to you, loser." And then so anyway, it's not always like not everybody there is abundant minded, like let's grow together type thing. But you just go to the event and I take notes and I try to learn from the teaching that's there, and then I try to network. So I went and grabbed lunch with Justin and his friend Aaron Parker. And I didn't really know those guys, but I was like, let's go grab lunch, and we grabbed dinner the night before. And then with Justin Moore, I coordinated and we went and got pizza at a pizza party type thing. And so just meals together and just I kind of invited myself, honestly. So it wasn't like when you go to these events, if you just stay in your hotel room and be shy, then that's what you'll get out of it. But I try to go and be around people who are more successful than me and just network with them. And I don't really have much to bring to the table, so I pay for the food. Like, I picked up the bill at dinner, and that kind of gives you favor with Aaron and Justin. Like, I bought him dinner, and so it kind of builds some respect there. So I went to that event and just kind of was a loner, if you will, and tried to network. I definitely learned information from the stage about creating better content, but then I cultivated those relationships. I was just at an event with Naylor. It was $3,000 ticket. We got
I heard. I was just talking to Naylor about that.
what did he say about the event?
Uh, well, he said that it was great. You guys had the VIP tickets. You guys learned a lot of information. You got to meet the right people, and you were taking like notes after notes because I listened to your podcast too, and you said you had like I don't know 15 plus pages of
The
notes.
first day, and it was a 3-day event.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the reason why I wanted to talk about this top of mind because you go to a ton of events, and you do. I've noticed that you go to some alone, and I'm glad that you said something about you just have to kind of like interject yourself. You can't wait for somebody to be like, "Hey, you want to come hang out?" You gotta be forward with it.
Yeah, and you want mentors who are where you want to be. So when I went to Vid Summit, like Mr. Beast is the teacher and he's the biggest YouTuber in the world. So it's like I'll learn from Mr. Beast. I'll humble myself. Like I'm not the greatest YouTuber. Mr. Beast is. Let me learn from him. And then when you're around other people like that, you just network. And so when Naylor and I were at this event, they had meals and we'd sit at the table. We met David from Louisiana and got to connect with him, exchange numbers. We actually had multiple meals together with David, and he really was encouraging. And then we met Ryan from Tampa and his wife, and connected with them. We actually did a podcast with Ryan and exchanged information. And so I meet new friends at these events, and then you never know where those relationships are going to go. Now, I was going to go to that event solo, and then Naylor, texted me. He's like, "Hey, are you going to this event?" I was like, "I'm planning on it." He's like, "All right, let's go together." And I was going to get the general admission ticket, and he's like, "Let's get the platinum, let's get the VIP." And I was like, "Oh man," because the general admission was $1,000, and then I was like 3,000, so I felt peer pressure by Naylor. And I was like, all right, I didn't want to be a El Cheapo. So, but I'm really glad that we did go to the event, network, learn. It was the best event I've ever been to. And then uh yeah, I could talk about that for a while, but I didn't know exactly what else you wanted to know about the continuing education.
Well, how did you decide to choose that event? Because there's a lot of events out there. So how are you choosing which ones you're going to go to and invest your money into?
Well, the Myron Golden event. So on YouTube, Myron Golden, he's a businessman, and he kind of comes from the world of the success business circuit out there of like Zig Ziglar and Jim Rohn and Earl Nightingale and Dan Kennedy, and like he was very influenced by that kind of success culture, and he's also a Christian man. He teaches biblical principles from the Bible. And so he'll teach you a business lesson, but he'll actually use scriptures to teach it. It's very, very unique approach. So I really respect him. I met him in person at Vid Summit. He was a teacher at Vid Summit, and I saw him in the hall. Pardon me, I saw him in the breakfast place one morning, and I was like starstruck. I was just like, oh my gosh, that's Myron Golden. He's sitting at the table over there. I'm trying like not to look, and then the next morning I had breakfast. He's in there again, and he's a big deal. I mean, he charges for his coaching calls. Erica, for 1 hour is $40,000. For one day, if you want to do a day of coaching with him, it's 350,000. And then if you want to be in his actual program, it's $1 million for the program for the year. And people pay that, and they see a massive ROI on it. Anyway, the guy's a big, very, very, very big deal. And then on my last day, I was just about to leave. He was in the hotel lobby, and he's just standing there waiting for. He has a private jet he flew back on, but he's waiting for the limo thing to pick him up. And he's a big, big deal. And I saw him just standing in the lobby, and I walk up to him. I was like, "Hey, Myron, do you mind if I get a picture with you?" And he's like, "Sure." And then his phone rang, and then he's like, "1 second." And then he talks on the phone, and it was the limo company. Like, hey, we're going to be there in 5 minutes or whatever. And he's like, okay. And we take a picture, and I was like, hey, man, I was like, anyway, I shared with him some personal information really quick, and he gave me a really good piece of advice. And he was very nice to me. Like um, he just treated me like normal human being. Like he didn't act like he was all that in a bag of chips, even though he's a multimillionaire. And he was very kind to me. So anyway, when he had his event, I had these warm experiences in person with Myron Golden. I was like, I just want to go. Like, I like the way he made people remember the way you make them feel. And I was like, I like the way he made me feel. He made me feel like Superman, important. And so anyway, because it was his event, I wanted to go. And then secondly, David Shands, who's a friend with Naylor, he did a YouTube video, and he's like, I'm going to this event. David Shands is a very, very successful podcaster. And I was like, well, if David Shands is going as an attendee, I should probably go as an attendee. So it was like a no brainer to go to Myron Golden's business event, and it was a no-brainer to go to the Vid Summit event. Those are both outside of the lawn care landscaping industry, but I want to be better at YouTube and I want to be better at business. And so I put myself in these environments. I invest my money into my future. It's expensive. Vid Summit was $1,000 ticket. Stayed at a nice hotel. You know, it's probably like a $3,000-$4,000 trip. The trip to Tampa for Myron Golden event was like a $5,000 investment. 3,000 for the ticket. We stayed at the JW Marriott. It's very nice. Yeah, it's fancy. Took dinner. It's 5,000 bucks, but I'm sharpening my business skills, being at these events, being around these thoroughbred winners, and that's why I continued to do it. And I host my own event, the Lawn Care Life Conference, and so with Jason Creole. So for me going to these events and seeing how world class they're run and all the little attention to detail, it makes me realize, okay, well, we could do this better. We could do that better. And like, I see what the high standard of excellence is. And I want our event, the Lawn Care Life Conference, I want our event to be that world class experience for anyone who comes to Springville, Alabama in February. It's like they go back and like, that's the best event I've ever been to. That's my goal is when they're driving home or flying home, that's the conversation they're having with their spouse is like, I'm so glad I came. That was the best event ever. So it's also kind of practice for me to see how the greats do their events.
Right. You don't want to, what do they say? Like, don't reinvent the wheel. But then you're educating yourself, and then you're able to pour that back into your community, and you're able to pour it into the books that you're writing, because you have published four books and you have a new one coming out. And so can we kind of go back to the earlier days when you were, you were doing, what is it, cut that grass, make that cash? Like, what
Mhm.
was your mindset at that time when you were writing that book?
Well, Cut That Grass and Make That Cash was basically my story of starting my entrepreneurial journey as a non-entrepreneur. I didn't know anything about business. I was absolutely broke. Many times my bank was minus, so it wasn't even like I had one time I checked my bank account, I had 7 cents in there, and I told my friend, I was like, I don't have two nickels to rub together because if I would have went to the bank and withdrew my whole life savings, they would have given me a nickel and 2 pennies because that's the only way you can get to 7 cents unless they give you 7 pennies. So I literally didn't have two nickels to rub together. I would have had a nickel and I had to rub it with a penny and another penny. So that's like that when I started my entrepreneur journey, like that was my financial state. And sometimes I'd get on there and then my bank was negative. Like I remember one
Mhm.
time I had Bank of America at the time. I don't use them anymore, but my check-in was like minus 300, my savings was like minus 500, and I called him and I was like crying. I was like, please, can you just get me back to zero? I'll do anything, because it was all these fees that like I might have went over like $2, and then there's all these fees, and I was just begging with the customer service person that didn't speak English. I was like, please just do whatever you got to do to get me to zero, please. And the guy did it, and he's like, 1 second, and then next thing you know, I checked online, and it was like I literally had zeros, and I was like, yes, I felt like I was the richest man in the world because my bank account said zero instead of minus 300. And I don't know what he did, but somehow he just raised all the fees and got me back to zero. But that's how I started in business. I was broke as you could imagine. I knew nothing about business, and I started a lawn care business out of a Honda Accord. I wasn't even chucking the truck. I had a 1997 Honda Accord. I didn't even own it. I was renting it, And I started my lawn business out of that place. And so I wrote that first book just to be like, hey, here's my story. And it didn't have some crazy ending where I had this multi-million-dollar business that was running perfectly. It's just I was getting a little bit better, but I knew my story could encourage somebody else who maybe can relate to starting a business from nothing and making some mistakes and kind of stubbing your toe and learning from your mistakes. And so I was like, hey, here's my story. And I wrote Cut That Grass and Make That Cash. And it was the results or the feedback of people were like, man, I love that book. Like, thanks so much for sharing it. It really encouraged me. Like, wow, someone listened to the audiobook or the read the paperback book and they got value out of it. So it's kind of a nudge to like, well, just I'll share the next phase of my story and the next one. And the most recent book, I kind of just laid it all on the line because I've learned a lot more since I wrote Cut That Grass, Make That Cash. I've matured as a human, I've matured as a business owner. And so I just share, hey, here's everything I've learned about life, about business. And for less than 20 bucks, I mean, the book's I think 1964, something like that. It's under 20 bucks. It's like somebody will get well, at least one nugget out of the book that will be, they'll have an ROI. But my suspicion is there'll be some things in there that they'll take away that will be massive ROI of saving them so they don't have to repeat the mistake that I made.
So when you were writing when you were writing that first book, like what was going through your head when you're like, "You know what? I'm going to write this book. I don't really have a big fancy ending, but maybe it'll help somebody. I don't know." How did you have the confidence to write it and then the knowledge to figure out like how to publish it, where to put it?
I binge watched. They call it YouTube University when you just like binge watch YouTube videos. So my algorithm for that 6 months of writing the book, like if you get on my algorithm now, it's a bunch of golf videos. Like the algorithm knows I like golf. But for that 6 month, 7 month period, my algorithm was all this Kindle direct publishing, or like I was learning all these words, like how to upload your book on Amazon. And I would just watch the video after video after video where they explained everything. And ultimately, that led me to there's no way I'm going to figure this out. And so, what I did is I watched a video by this guy named Dale from the self publishing school, and he had a video where he's like, I hired like a $5 Fiverr guy, $100 Fiverr guy, and like a $5,000 Fiverr guy, and like here's the results. And he shared the results that they did with like the book cover and all the interior design of the book. And so anyway, in the video, he put the guy's name who did the world class job. So I was like, well, I could just hire this guy and he could teach me and he could do it. And so I did. And the guy was pretty expensive. And he's in Europe. And I reached out to him. I was like, "Hey, you did a really good job for Dale. I'm writing my first book. Can you help me out?" And he's like, "Sure." And I paid him a lot of money, but he did everything, so I didn't have to figure out the intricacies of getting a book published on Amazon, which is a lot more difficult than it sounds. But with somebody who does that every day, I just had to follow their instructions, and then successfully they did their deal. The book was on Amazon. I ordered it just like everybody else, and it arrived. And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like it looks like a Dave Ramsey book or a whoever like business author. I mean, the book. I just couldn't believe it. I have them. I have them right behind me, as you can see. Eric, I mean, they're like legit books, and I was like, "What?" So yeah, I just hired a professional and paid them a lot of money, and they did all the work to make the book a reality.
Now, after you have the book and then you go on to promoting, um, like, do you ever get insecurities when you're trying to like promote yourself or trying to push? What goes on there?
Yeah, so my coach, Justin Moore, I mentioned him earlier. He's like, with a book launch, you have to view it as a year launch. And he's like, if you think you're talking about it too much, he's like, you're not. He's like, you have to talk about it everywhere, anywhere, all the time for 1 year. And I was so timid with my other book launches where I was like, oh, I don't want to annoy everyone. So I'll just mention a little bit here, a little bit there. And I was very timid. I was very conscientious that I didn't want to go overboard and be like, oh, Paul's just promoting his book, and so I unfortunately I like dialed things back so far that my marketing efforts were below where they should have been. And so now with this book, there's more confidence. Like I know you're going to get ROI if you get the book because it's only. Yeah, I don't want to make $19 sound like that's not that much money, but for the value that's in the book, one little idea, one little mistake you could avoid that's going to save you thousands of dollars. Like in my mind, it's like this is a massive ROI. So now I'm more courageous with knowing that what I have to share with the world is going to help somebody, and so I'm more courageous now and long term minded. Like when the fall's around, I'm still going to be talking about how to build a thriving lawn care business book, and so yeah, that's a little bit about the marketing of it. I've done a poor job on the previous few books, and this one I have a more intentional. They call it like a book launch. So I have like a marketing plan of how I'm going to share with the world about the new book, and hopefully I'll execute the plan. But the plan's in place for like a year long. Talk about it everywhere, anywhere, and be unashamed about it.
And I've noticed, I on social media, I see you posting like the behind the scenes photos, and then getting people engaged. Like, what cover should I choose? And you gave different options, so people are invested. And I think this relates going back to, like, our business, like the Pooper Scooper business for the listeners. That's kind of what I did when I started my business, because I didn't really have a ton of content. I just was unapologetic, told everybody and anybody, and shared the journey, and that helps people get invested in it. And I believe that's the same thing that's probably going on with you. I mean, with your other books, I've read them, but with this one, I even reached out. I was like, "Hey, are you doing a book signing? Can I get a signed book?" Because I've seen how much work you've put into this, so I feel like I'm part of the journey now.
And I appreciate everyone who helped with the book cover because I literally though I was like, I liked option one, I liked option two. So I put which one do you like best? Option one, two, or three? And then I basically was like, whatever you guys vote on is going to be the book cover. And I was like, I'm not going to make the final decision. I'm going to let you make the final decision. And then book cover one, option one, had the most votes. And so that's the one I went with. And I also had a misspelling on there that I didn't even notice the word Well, anyway, Naylor pointed out something that was missing. So we caught that ahead of production, and then we went with the fan favorite, which was option one. So yeah, it was like truly you picked the book cover. For those who voted option one, a lot of people voted option two and three as well. But I was like, I'm just going to trust that the public opinion is going to be the best. So yeah, that was fun, and I tried that, and so far so good. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you're doing a really good job. What would you say? Do you have a favorite part of the book?
Yes, there's like a worksheet in the book if you get the paperback that's your identifying your ideal customer. And
Ooh.
so there's spots like if you have a pencil or a pen, I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of questions and then you'll answer. I can pull this up really quick, Erica. One
Yeah,
second. Um,
let's give the listeners and viewers a sneak peek.
this is called the Ideal Customer Profile Worksheet. Here's the questions to consider, and then you can actually write the answer. So the book is like more than just a book, but what is the age range of your ideal customer? What is their gender? What is their marital or family status? So is your ideal customer, is it someone who's single? Is it someone who's married? Is it families with young children? What is their income level? And again, in the book, you just don't ask yourself this question. You write down the answer because it's going to help you really bring clarity to your ideal customer. What is their occupation? What is their professional? Where do my ideal customers live? Are they urban, suburban, or rural areas? Rural areas. Are there specific neighborhoods or regions where my services are most needed? And then literally in the book I put neighborhood 1, neighborhood 2, neighborhood 3. So you actually fill out like what neighborhood do you want to give your marketing efforts towards? And then what is their lifestyle? Like what hobbies do they have? Where do they spend their free time? What values do they have? And then about their property, like what type of property do they own? Are these residential homes? Are these commercial properties? Are these rental properties? What size is their property? And then the list goes. I mean, this worksheet is. I'm just giving you like the very very beginning. It's very 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 in depth. Like, how frequently do they want service? What lawn service are they looking for? Um, what challenges do they face? Have they had bad experiences in the past? What is their biggest frustrations with their current yard? And anyway, I could go through all the questions, but that's just like 20% of the questions. So in the book, this ideal customer worksheet, as you fill it out, by the time you fill it all out, it should give you a good idea of like, okay, this is who my ideal customer is. So I just read you a few questions. I didn't want to bore everyone, but in the book, all these questions are there, and then you interact and you fill them out, and then that will help you, because once you know who your ideal customer is, then in the book I teach you how to market to that specific person, so you can land your dream clients.
Yeah, no, I don't think that that's boring at all. That's really important. It's tedious to go through all of that. And for those of you that are listening, and you're like, I don't know how to answer those questions. What I would suggest is if you already have some customers, I hope that you already have some. Think about the customer that you love going to their property. You love taking care of them. It's priced right. You're not dreading going to the property. Kind of examine those customers and what traits and qualifications they have, and jot that stuff down. I think that would help. But Paul, say for instance, if people are like, I don't know how to fill this out. I have no idea what I even want. What's some suggestions you could give to them to help guide them through that sheet?
Yeah, just usually the first thought that comes to your mind when you ask yourself the question, just jot down that answer. And then when you're done with the worksheet, it's a lot longer than what I just read. It's going to take you probably 10-15 minutes to fill out the worksheet. But even if you don't have the answer, you can leave it blank if you want. But by the time you get through all the questions, it's going to start making you think who your ideal customer is. Because then what you want to do is you only want to say yes to those customers. And then the people that are outside of that framework, you want to say no to. And then once you have those neighborhoods identified, then you just start marketing to these customers in these neighborhoods. And then you only have the customers that you want. So I would just answer what pops to your mind and really, really get clarity on who your ideal customer is. And this worksheet will really kind of hold your hand and walk through it. In the chapter that follows, we'll kind of unpack. Now that you have your answers, here's your ideal customer. The Pareto rule, Erica, is the 80-20 rule. You've probably heard, is like 20% of your customers bring in like 80% of the revenue in most cases. And so, or like 20% of the work we do drives 80% of the results, meaning 80% of the work we do only brings in 20% of the results. So we want to get rid of the 80% that's just kind of like a waste, and double down on that 20% that's our sweet spot. So it's just identifying that dream customer that we have, and then getting more of those is the point of the worksheet.
And don't feel bad about not wanting to service some customers. I used to feel bad for the folks that didn't want to pay what I wanted to charge. They're like, I only want to pay you $10 a week. And I used to feel bad because I'm like, oh, they can't afford it. Oh, they're on a budget. But then I had this one experience where I showed up at a house. The woman talked me down on my price against my better judgment. And this is what she said to me. She goes, normally my son does it, but he's away at our lake house right now. What? I want a lake house. So she talked me down on the price. Her son is away at their second property at the lake house, and I was feeling bad about charging her too much. After that, I left that yard. I said, never again, never again.
Dan Kennedy shared this story where there was a chiropractor he's working with, and the chiropractor has this patient who comes in like, "Oh, my back hurts," and I'm in such bad shape, and but she's like, "I can't afford to come, you know, every week like you want me to. I can only afford once a month or whatever." And so he's like, "Oh, okay, okay. Well, you really need me to help you. I'm gonna give you those for free. Just I'll charge you only for this." And gives her this big discount. And then one day, he, he she was talking to him and whatever, and she's like, I'm feeling better. She's like, I just got this massage yesterday, and they had this special. She was So she went and she spent all this money on at a spa or whatever on this massage day with all this stuff. And he's sitting there thinking, what? Like, I'm giving you a discount. And then you go and spend all hundreds of dollars over there on the spa day, and you're like nickeling me down. And so he had that aha moment. He's like, oh, never again. She was playing me,
Mhm.
and she had money the whole time, but he thought he had to discount his services. Uh, but and then she was over there balling out at the spa, and then nickeling and diming him.
Yeah, it's good lessons. I feel like a lot of us go through it and have that moment and hopefully we make the change, right? And we're like, no, 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 we're not going to do that again. So I think that it's great that you have that worksheet in there to help the readers kind of walk through it and get some clarity because if you're kind of just like blindly trying to figure it out, you're going to spend a lot of money and a lot of time marketing to customers that aren't going to help your business flourish.
Totally.
Yeah. All right, cool. I feel like we covered a lot of stuff. We talked about going to events, investing in yourself. We talked about your journey with the books, which is really great. I'm so happy that you're bringing people along with the journey. Is there anything else that you got going on that you want the listeners to know about?
Yeah, so we just put I just created a new website, and on the website we have a free pricing guide. If you are in lawn care landscaping, you want to know how much should I charge, I literally show you, like, if you're in Arkansas, here's the market average. Because I've interviewed a lot of people from that region. I've interviewed a lot of people from California, a lot of people from New York, done coaching calls. So I feel like I'm always asking either on a podcast or behind the scenes, like, hey, how much do you charge for a mulch install? How much do you charge for a basic maintenance? Like, I'm always asking people from different regions because I know the Atlanta market pretty well. I have a lot of friends here that own lawn care landscaping industry. Pardon me, landscaping businesses, and we eat pizza, we talk, I know the prices in Atlanta, but they're different in California, they're different in New York. So I literally share with you, here's from my research, here's the market average in Arkansas. Uh here's the and literally like share with you the price. Like if it takes you 60 minutes to do a service, here's what you should charge if you live in the Arkansas or surrounding areas. If you live in the New York state area, here's what you should charge. It's substantially more than Arkansas. California, I share those pricing. Obviously I share the Atlanta market's pricing. So anyway, all this information, it's about an 8-page guide. It's the entrepreneur's guide to lawn care pricing. I'm giving it away for a very temporary time, completely for free. I could probably sell this for hundreds of dollars. It's that valuable because you could basically have it as like your pricing, checks and balances, if you will. You can just double check. Well, what does Paul say I should charge? You know what I mean? And it
Right.
shows you for specific services, for maintenances, and it's regionally based. And it shows you all the things to consider when you're putting together your quotes and your pricing. So for a very, very limited time, if you're listening to this in real life, the new website is called thepauljamison.com. Some joker took pauljamison.com. He's a real estate agent in North Carolina. So I couldn't get that website. So I had to put the in front of it. So it's thepauljamison.com. At the front of that website, it will say the free guide, the entrepreneur's guide to lawn care pricing. If you've wanted to know what you should charge, this is my best research and information on what to charge, why to charge that amount. And I'm not going to give it away for ever for free, but for a limited time, you can get that. You can get that document 100% for free. You just download it, and it's all yours. So
Yeah, your website looks good. I was on there earlier. And I'm so happy you're offering this resource and you're offering it for free right now because at the end of the day, the pricing is so important that will make or break your business.
yeah, you can't be doing a service for $10, whether you're picking up poop or mowing grass, because it doesn't work. The math doesn't work. So
No, it doesn't. And the accountant's like, hey, you're not making any money right now. What are you doing? All right, cool. I truly appreciate it, Paul. You gave us so much good information. It's always a pleasure chatting with you guys. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. And as always, until next time, bye.